Hey, this is James Glass, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about surge protection devices, or SPDs. Um, I'm installing one here in the panel I installed when I built the house, and there's three types of SPDs, and you can learn more um, on the web. But this is a breaker SPD, and the nice thing about this is it's going to go right here at the top of the panel, but it still provides a 30 amp breaker. In this case, we're going to use a dryer circuit. I'm going to switch these guys around here. It needs to be installed at the top. And I'm going to basically show this hooked up and talk a little bit more about the protection devices in a second. So I'm going to pause the video, go ahead and install this. It's really easy. It just pops right in. Give me 2 seconds and I'll do this. Okay, I've resumed just to show you a couple of things during the process. And remember, I'm going to talk about the three types of SPDs, surge protection devices at the end. But what I've done is gotten this SPD breaker as close to the main as possible. And of course, by the way, this panel is not live; it's dead. It's shut off at the main disconnect. So that's the important thing. This has to go. If you're using a breaker like this, there's two designs, and I'll talk about that in a second, but you got to put it as close to the main disconnect as possible. Got to make sure that the little pigtail that they have included is hooked up to your neutral bus bar. And if you have to move some other breakers around, as I did, to accommodate this, you need to always make sure that you have approved connections. So in this case, I had to move the living room lights and the hallway lights from here to here. I took out my dryer circuit, my just regular old BR 30 amp circuit, right? And now my dryer is going to be on the 30 amp surge protector. And keep in mind, this is just a pass through. This functions as just a regular old 30 amp breaker and an SPD. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So my dryer will now be on this device. The entire panel will be protected. But just so you note, when you got to move stuff around, connections have to be made in the box. They have to be approved. You know, you can't just tape these things together. These wire nuts or these push nuts. And you've got to get this SPD absolutely at the top. It's not as effective if you shove this thing down below. So even if you have empty spaces down here, don't be lazy. Get this up here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and then talk a little bit more about the three types of SPDs that are on the market that can protect your whole panel. Okay, everything's wired in. The panel is still off, but you saw the first part of this video before I paused it, where the dryer, where the dryer breaker was, and I've removed that and moved a few other breakers around and installed the SPD, the surge protection device. A couple other things to note before we talk about the different breakers. Anytime you have to use a white wire to be a conductor, you got to tag it with black tape, which I did for this because I had to extend the dryer circuit about 12 inches when I moved that over to get the SPD in the very top. So let's talk about the three different types of whole house options you can provide. Whole panel, which provides the whole house. So option one, and I happen to be using an Eaton BR panel, but whether you're using Homeline or General Electric, they all those companies have these three options. And 2020 and newer NEC is requiring an SPD device, one of these three that I'm about to talk about, in your house when you wire it. So that here in Virginia, we're about 3 years behind. So if I'm doing my math right, I think it's going to be 2024 where SPD protection will just be a standard part of every panel that's being installed in new construction or upgraded. So this is something that's going to be real relevant real quick. In fact, so many people are already doing it. Had a really hard time getting this BR breaker. I went to my local electric store, and they were 4,000 behind, 4,000 plus behind. They're like, we can put your name on the waiting list. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I did find one online, and so I'm pretty happy about that. So what are the 3 ways that you can meet the upcoming code, or more importantly, just do this now, like I'm doing, to protect your house? We've had some voltage spikes from our power company. A couple neighbors lost their HVAC systems, their compressors burned out. There's been some TV and computer damage. I was lucky. When these power surges came across the lines, I did not get affected. But I was like, yeah, you know what? I just need to put an SPD in. So I went with the mid-range. What are the 3 options? Option 1 is you get an SPD breaker. I can't remember how many amps offhand it is. 6,000 ish amps, maybe. Everybody's got it on their website, and it requires, it does require that you feed it from another breaker. So it's going to take up a bunch of space. It'll take up the space of the SPD when you install it across line 1 and 2 and the bus bar. Plus, you have to power it from an additional 2-pole breaker. So you're going to take 4 positions in your box with that. It also provides the least amount of protection. I went with, I think this is a 36,000 amp option. I think the other one was 18 or less. Yeah, the other one was 18 or less. Maybe it was even down to 6 or 10. This 36,000 amp surge protection device doesn't take up any additional space, because what this company, Eaton, and what most other companies do is they just give you a pass-through for, a circuit. So in this case, it was the dryer. So I didn't lose any space. I got the joy of having the whole house, and this entire panel provides my house whole house protection of 36,000 amps, and it can function just as a 30 amp, regular old 30 amp breaker. It's really pretty ingenious, and if you ask me, outside of lightning strikes 10 feet from your home, I think this is the best option. And then the third option is a brick. So again, Eaton and all these other companies will provide you a big old brick, and I think they do 108,000 amps. When I looked it up, it was massive, and it's designed to be mounted ideally on the outside of a panel. This is flush mount. If you have a surface mount panel, they give you a little knockout connection, and you can mount it here. It also has to be fed from a 2-pole breaker, 30 or 50 amp, I can't remember, but you do need, you're going to use at least two positions in your panel no matter what. And in the case of the lowest line of protection, you're going to use 4. But that brick is the most protective for the whole house. Now, I ran the numbers, and I'm like, golly, Ned, you know what? Unless I have a lightning strike, this is going to handle what the utility is going to throw at me. And unless I have a lightning strike, I don't see the value of the brick. I also couldn't get the brick conveniently mounted in this panel. I couldn't fit it in here. Plus, if you put the brick in the panel, see these little LED lights that show you that the surge protector is working? You can't see them when you put the panel cover back on. So that's kind of a downside. So I went with it's sort of a good, better, best. So I went with the better option. Also happened to use no additional space in the panel. Super easy to wire into this whole thing, even with moving all that stuff around in about 20 minutes. And then what I did is I bought these surge protection outlets, which also has an audible alarm. And I'm going to put every sensitive piece of electronics, the TV, the computers, every outlet that feeds. I bought 3 of these because we have 2 computers and a TV. And you can always retrofit these. So I'll have a surge protection outlet, and it has a little green light that also shows that it's working, which is really cool. So there you go. There's your 3 options. You've got the in panel, lowest sort of good option, and it's like 10 or 18,000 amps. You got that. Takes up 4 spaces in your panel. You got the better option, which is what I went with, which is 36,000 amps, takes up just 2 spaces, but those 2 spaces can still be used for a circuit. In this case, it's the dryer. And then you got the best option, which is the brick. And if you have a place to put that, I did not, then that's awesome. Price wise, everything comes out to be roughly the same. You know, you're going to spend a few $100 on this. And that's just the way it is. I wound up finding this brand new on eBay for like $120. I think retail on this thing's $130. And so, but it lists for a little bit more than that. So, you know, it's well worth it. None of the options will go over 200 in materials. All of the options are going to provide whole house protection. All of the options are cheaper than buying computers. I mean, that's just really what it boils down to. Hey, thanks for watching.